Next up is our youngest speaker of the event, here to share his insights into film. Please welcome our movie enthusiast, Sam Wang.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So when I was watching the new Ant-Man movie, Ant-Man 3 Quantumania, how many of you have watched that? Okay, great. It's actually a bit more than I expected. Great. I immediately recognized an interesting difference it had with a movie I watched just a few days before, Wandering Earth 2. How many have watched that? Okay, great. So, the two had many things in common. Both were imaginative sci-fi films in which the protagonist was called from their daily lives and to go on a quest to save the world. Now, in English class, this is called the hero's journey. Guess what? We all know that. And what, you may ask, is the difference? So the difference, what if I tell you that it's actually the cultural view as to what the ideal hero is? So, in Ant-Man, Scott Lang travels to the quantum realm and fights for his family, and he fights the antagonist just so that he can get his daughter back from Kang safely. What about Wandering Earth? Well, now you can see it. Liu Peiqiang fights for the good of the people and the society, and he takes orders from the government. In other words, they differ in what they believe in and fight for. So, the heroes in Western movies are often portrayed striding into battle with their friends and family, frequently because of these people as well. They may not always follow orders, and some even broke some pretty serious laws. But they always aim to achieve the best possible outcome for their friends and family, making them morally correct if not always legally. Now, a few other heroes in Western movies that follow these lines include Don of the Fast and Furious franchise, the famous family guy, and Top Gun Maverick's Maverick, the genius pilot. So, in Fast and Furious, Dom often talks about the importance of his family and that, here goes the quote, the most important thing in life will always be family. This is the famous quote that earned him one of his very famous nicknames, which I just used, the family guy. As for Top Gun Maverick, he is one of the famous examples that doesn't always follow the rules but is still deemed the hero. In Top Gun Maverick, they have to fly this route that was believed to be impossible by the pilots that were in this program, and he, as the training coach, took a military jet and flew the route without telling anyone. Now, this is pretty against the rules, and in reality is what lands you into a court-martial. However, he was successful, and not only did this make him the hero of the movie, he also gained control of the whole mission. So these acts, unlike Chinese films, are deemed heroism. As for Chinese films, a rather different depiction of what the ideal hero is present. Liu Peiqiang, as I said, is an astronaut and the hero of the movies, and he sacrifices himself for the whole planet so that they can blow up Jupiter and get Earth out safely. That's the first film. As for the second, he also makes some certain sacrifices. The heroes in Chinese movies are the ones that follow orders from the authority, and they would never give up while trying to accomplish these goals. And they are the ones that value the interests of the society and the people above that of themselves. So clearly that's a very big difference between Western and Chinese movies. So why is that? Well, cultural difference. So in China and other East Asian countries, the society is often called the collectivist society, and this comes from the word collectivism. As for the West, it's often called individualism. So what's the difference? Well, in collectivism, I'll explain with a very simple example, a race. So in a collectivist society, say that a group of people enter a race in which there is only one champion. However, this group works together so that the fastest member of that group wins. And the rest of them won't claim the championship, but they will ensure that that fastest member that was predetermined wins that game. And although they're not the ones that win, they will be proud and they're happy because a member of their team won. That is one very simple definition of collectivism, valuing someone's interests and valuing the interests of the whole group above that of yourself. As for individualism, our race might look something like this. Each member of the group would race forward and try to claim the championship. Whoever is fastest in that very race would win, rather than the one that was previously determined. They might still celebrate the success together, in fact they most likely will, as there's no society that's truly pure collectivism or pure individualism. However, notice the main difference here. In a collectivist society, everyone tries to win, while in a collectivist society, that one person wins and the others support him, while in an individualist society, it is that everyone tries to win. That's valuing one's interests above that of the whole group. So it's not really against anything, or it's not China against the world, it's really that these two are both important aspects of society and different facets of what modern world looks like. So, why is this difference so? So, history is often believed to be the main contributor to this major difference in our whole world. And first of all, I'll explain the West, which is individualism. As you can see, be free, individual, and yourself. That is the center of individualism, which is traced all the way back to the end of the Renaissance and the beginning of the Enlightenment. During the Enlightenment, thinking began to evolve from religion-based, which actually began in the Renaissance already. In other words, philosophy began to change its focus from religion to humanism. And during the Enlightenment, thinkers like John Locke made some pretty important changes. So the Enlightenment valued self-actualization and developing your own talents above that of the whole nation, religion, or society. These people believed in developing your own talents to the highest degree possible, and this was one of their key forms of self-actualization, which, if you have seen the Maslow pyramid, is at the very top. So the second part is John Locke and liberalism. John Locke was the one that was one of the key thinkers during the Enlightenment, and he was later deemed the father of liberalism for his thinking. He valued, above all, limited governments, free will, and property rights. So what this meant was that, first of all, the people could make their own decisions, and regardless of what society, governments, social norms, whatever wanted them to do, they were free to make their own decisions as long as it's legal and doesn't hurt the rights of others, obviously. And as for limited governments, it was that the society and the government, at that time mainly monarchies, had no right to interfere with what decisions people chose to do every single day. In other words, for example, the government wanted people to sign up for a war and to join the army. However, if you don't want to, you have the right not to. And the Vitruvian Man, as shown here, is a very famous symbol of humanism and later individualism, because it's one of the first and one of the most iconic images of humanism. In other words, focusing on the human as he is himself, rather than the religious embodiment of God. Hold on, why is this not working? Okay. As for the East, specifically China and other countries that were influenced by the tributary system and Confucianism. In China, Confucianism has always been the orthodox class of thinking for thousands of years, beginning from the Chunqiu times. And Confucianism believes in, one, subjecting one's desires and goals to that of the group. In other words, Confucianism believes that as a citizen, your duty is to do your duty to the country and to subject your own interests and needs when the society calls for it. So, for example, when society needs a fighter, you are a fighter. When it needs a farmer, you're a farmer. It also calls for uniting under the ruling class, in most cases the emperor and the imperial bureaucracy, and to do your duty to the nation and the society. So as I said, in that imaginary race, the people would work together, and this is one of the forms of subjecting your personal needs to the whole society. So, As we have seen, culture is what's different. Are there any similarities? Well, indeed, yes. Although we have developed around the world for thousands of years in different ways, and we have experienced different cultures, we grew up in different societies, we are linked by one of the most key factors that make us similar, that we are all humans. So, one of the things that comes from this shared and common identity of humans is what most people instinctively avoid, fear, or is nervous about. So, before we talk about that, a few questions first. How are the villains in horror movies around the world similar? Think about that and try to come up with a few answers in your head. Second question. What is scary about a doll that resembles a human? For this one, try to picture one doll that you have seen in your life, maybe one from a horror movie trailer, the movie itself, or just the movie poster. There are plenty of them, trust me. This is really common, and I'll address that later. Third question. Can a smile, the worldwide symbol of positivity, be slightly creepy if it goes too far, or isn't done the proper way? Well, right there you have a smile. It doesn't seem creepy, but what if one does? And what makes it creepy? Introducing the Uncanny Valley. The Uncanny Valley was first proposed in the study The Uncanny by the philosopher and psychologist Sigmund Freud in 1919. It described the phenomenon where when seeing something similar, but not quite similar to something you have seen before or you are familiar with, for example, a human that doesn't quite look the same as any other, or an object that you have seen and is acquainted with years before, but now it looks slightly different, you feel slightly, unsettled or nervous. So, the Uncanny Valley itself was proposed in 1970 by the Japanese robotics professor Masahiro Mori. Masahiro Mori was a famous robotics engineer and professor, and when he was building robots, he discovered this interesting phenomenon where when a robot gets the more human-like, people tend to like it more. However, when it gets really close to a human, but doesn't quite look human or doesn't quite feel human, it tends actually to make people nervous or disgusted at it. So, actually this right here. So as you can see, at first it rises very quickly, and it goes from an industrial robot, which is clearly not human-like and not very much liked, to a toy robot, which usually looks a bit more human-like. However, at about 75%, it suddenly drops really dramatically. Why is that? Well, the Uncanny Valley basically states that when something gets human-like and humanoid, but it doesn't look completely human, it can actually cause a lot of discomfort in the viewer. So, unlike things that are completely not human-like, the Uncanny Valley can actually cause a lot of hatred, discomfort, and fear, while things like industrial robots only cause a lack of empathy. You don't actually fear it, you just don't love it. So, the Uncanny Valley is due to the part of the brain called the amygdala. It is a small part of your brain, here is the red part, and it is in charge of fear, nervousness, and risk evaluation. It's actually a really important part of your brain, because when you see these uncanny things, then it immediately leaps into action and tells your body to stay away. For example, when you see a person that doesn't look quite normal, then the amygdala starts working really hard, and it tells your body, maybe this doesn't seem that right. It might be dangerous. You know what? I'm gonna stay away. And at first, this may seem a bit pointless because not everything on the road is there to kill you. However, once you think of it in terms of how we have developed through our tens of thousands of years of history, it actually makes a lot of sense. Before the development of the human civilization, early humans would have needed the amygdala and its relatively useless functions now to find out whether or not something could be potentially dangerous. And For example, they would need this to avoid death or illnesses because once they get ill, they usually tend not to survive it. However, if they can recognize whether or not an individual might be infected, they have that chance to stay away, and when the amygdala starts working, they are immediately removed from that dangerous situation, and this stops them from getting into a lot of danger and even life and death situations. Now, movies use the uncanny valley a lot, whether that be horror thrillers or just by accident. And there are some very famous instances where something have gone pretty wrong with a movie that was not supposed to use the uncanny valley. I'll talk about that later. So first of all, horror thrillers. One of the most famous examples is The Conjuring. In The Conjuring, rather than a big scary monster with hairy feet and huge claws, the villain is actually just a little girl in the form of a spirit in a dirty nightgown. Now, how is that scary? Well, I can assure you it very much is. I haven't included the picture in here because it's very scary. And as you see, as it is this spirit in a dirty nightgown, it naturally appears slightly uncanny to the viewer, and this is what makes the viewer afraid of it. Combined with the jump scares, it's a very effective scare throughout the whole movie, and really creeps the audience out, much better than Shrek or something like a scary version of the cat. If you have any idea of what I mean, I'll talk about that next. So, the other examples of what happened with the uncanny valley in movies is that they potentially use deformed or dead humans, for example, zombies, and as well as spirits. So zombies, deformed humans, and spirits are often used in horror movies as well to scare the audience. And the very reason is the uncanny valley. They seem humanoid enough, and they seem close enough to humans because they have a lot of things related to humans. I mean, they once were. However, once they become these deformed spirits, zombies, or demons, then immediately they don't seem quite human and begins to scare the audience. Yeah, the uncanny valley has also been used in movies like The Polar Express and Cats by accident. And in these occasions, it actually was doing something it wasn't supposed to do. These movies were for kids, however, the uncanny valley's presence meant that the kids found these movies very disturbing, and they didn't like it. When the movie Polar Express, shown here, came out, people immediately criticized its animations because they didn't look quite good, and the main reason was that the characters in the movies, specifically this kid and an old man, looked humanoid enough, but not quite human, causing discomfort in the audience. Now, doesn't that sound like the description of the uncanny valley? Yes, indeed it is. So, we show you that the uncanny valley has a lot of uses in these movies, and really, they have been used around the world very often in multiple different movies. Even though we are living in different parts of the world, we grew up in different cultures, and it is clear that our societies aren't the same as was shown with the collectivism versus individualism. So, movies are a truly international art form. They cross national borders, cultural boundaries, and even time and space. There have been movies that resemble each other, even though they are made decades apart from each other and come from different countries. So, next time you go to the cinema, try to watch out for a part of the movie that maybe links to the speech. Maybe it has an aspect in it that can be a similarity that is common in all movies. Maybe it's the uncanny valley, maybe it's the trope of different characters doing different things, or it can be something different that represents the culture or background it comes from. For example, the individualist versus collectivist. And that's it. Thank you.